anticipating your truth, anticipating your presence and the hearing of our prayers, knowing that you're a God who delights to hear and to answer the prayers of your people. Father, we pray for our children in teen ministry, that you would be with them, help their hearts to be tender, help our workers to be faithful and tender-hearted themselves as they serve and teach and minister to that age range. And for us tonight, as we draw near through your word, that your Spirit would minister truth and our hearts would be touched, that our conscience would be convicted, and that we would be changed. And help us, Lord, to draw confidence from your word for our own prayer lives. For we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So Genesis chapter 28, Jacob's journey of faith and prayer. We've been following how prayer and faith work in the lives of God's people. Today we're going to read about a day of disappointment. Jacob will be on the run. He will be a fugitive. He's forced to flee from his home. Even though he leaves with his father's blessing, his father Isaac knew what he's doing this time. Jacob faced an unknown future, having a brother that wants to kill him. He's going to begin a new chapter in his life. He's going to walk by faith because of the trouble that's in his life right now. But let's go ahead and read Genesis chapter 28. We'll begin verses 1 through 9. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. And God Almighty bless thee. This is the prayer. Even though it's spoken to Isaac, it is by Isaac, it is to Jacob, it is a prayer to God. So here's the prayer, verse 3. And God Almighty bless thee, and make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, and thou mayest be a multitude of people, and give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee, and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which God gave unto Abraham. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram unto Laban, son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take him a wife from thence, and that as he blessed him, he gave him a charge, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan, and that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother, and was gone to Padan Aram. And Esau, seeing that the daughters of Canaan pleased not Isaac his father, then went Esau unto Ishmael, and took unto the wives which he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebajoth, to be his wife. So we see the first major point here in chapter 28 are the first instructions for Jacob's journey. We all have a journey of faith, and now here we have Jacob. And we see Isaac's words to Jacob. Isaac tells Jacob to go to the home country. Go to Haran and choose a bride from his mother's relatives. In verse 3 and 4 is the actual prayer. Okay, I try to focus on prayer on Wednesday nights, and so we're learning here the prayer of faith through his father as Jacob's journey himself into faith and prayer. We see he prays what has already been promised by God. Okay, God has already promised those things. And remember who got the birthright? Who sold the birthright? Esau sold it to Jacob. So here it is being passed along, just as God said would happen. So these words again were the prayer in this passage. We'll see another vow prayer at the end of this chapter, but we see here Jacob the deceiver being blessed, and then he's going to be banished. But there's a light here. It seems negative, but it's really positive. This homeboy, okay, the first homeboy that we know, he's a homebody, right? He's not a man of the field. He's not a hunter. He's in the house. And so he is no longer going to be in the house. Fly, birdie, fly. He's going to be pushed out. And so Jacob the deceiver was blessed and then banished. He's blessed and he's on his way. And this is the last we hear of Isaac, just about. He drops off of the biblical account. We can learn, even though he lives another 43 years, Isaac drops out the scene. Isaac wasn't a man who he wasn't a dreamer of dreams. He wasn't a conqueror of continents. Isaac here is described as, once described this way. He was the mediocre son of a great father, Abraham, and he was the mediocre father of a great son, Jacob. And just to learn some lessons from Isaac, because this is the last we're going to hear of him. Isaac was a submissive son, if you remember. He was willing to be sacrificed, totally trusting in his father. He let someone else choose his bride. He was affectionate, and he was a caring husband. He prayed for a child for his wife, and she gets twins. So there's a lot of positive qualities from Isaac, but at the same time, we see negatives. Okay, we're all a bundle of positive and negative in our faith. Here are some of the negatives. He was indulgent. He played favorites to the one who could, fix him a good meal after hunting. He favored one son over the other. He was indulgent both as a husband and a father. He had little control over Esau. Esau would later marry 2 non-Israelite women. He had little control over Rebekah. Rebekah felt free to deceive him. He had little control over Jacob, who looked to Rebekah for leadership rather than his father. So Jacob learned more from his mother than his father. What I see from him is he was more passive than proactive, though he was still a man of faith. Hebrews 11:20 says this, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. So here we have the end of the story for Isaac. And again, negative and positive lessons we can learn from his life. And then at the end of the passage we just read, verses 6 to 9, we see Esau, a day late and a dollar short. Now he wants to please dad and mom. Jacob is not supposed to marry anybody from the land instead of going back to his mom's homeland. You know what? I won't marry anybody from the land either. I'll marry from a relative, Ishmael's children. So he's trying to gain his, good graces back with his mother and father here. But that's where we're at now. Jacob is pushed out of the nest because of circumstances, mostly because of his own doing and his mom's. And he's journeying on this road of faith. Let's look at verses 10 to 15 now. As we see, there's going to be a night of discovery here. Literally, he's going to be between a rock and a hard place. He's going to learn some lessons during this journey of faith. He'll discover that the God who was with Abraham and Isaac will also be with him. Instead of, he'll still have to learn to trust God. He'll still be a schemer for a little bit, but he'll learn that God has a plan for him. Jacob may have been separated from home here. We'll see that he's not separated from heaven. There's still God communicating with him. And we'll see also that God is still protecting him, caring for him through the ministry of angels. But let's read verses 10 to 12. And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night because the sun was set. And he took of the stones of that place and put them for his pillows and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, the ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. Imagine now going from Beersheba all the way back to where his grandparents came from, or his mother's parents, that, again, he's more of a homebody. He has traveled 60 miles, probably 3 days so far, probably trying to listen to footsteps. Is my brother following me? Has he sent somebody to follow me, to keep tabs on me? And now he is living by faith. He is a pilgrim now, literally walking by faith. to find a bride, to start a new chapter in his life. He may have been looking back again to see if anybody's dogging his steps, but here he has a dream, and we just read about. He sees the angels of God. There's a lot that can be said about that, the symbolism there, and the New Testament mentions of this ladder. But here again, Jacob sees angels on a stairway reaching from earth to heaven, and here he discovers he's not alone. Though physically he's alone, he's not alone because God is going to be with him. The same God that was with Abraham and Isaac is going to be watching over him with angels who will minister there to guard and to serve him. Let's look at verse 13. So he has this dream. There's a ladder touching the heavens and touching the earth. Verse 13. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land wherein thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt be spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all the places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again to this land, for I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. So the Lord is standing at the top of this ladder that touches the earth touches the heaven. And God reaffirms to Jacob the covenant which he gave to Abraham and to Isaac. So God's covenant promise to Abraham and Isaac is given to Jacob as well, but it was not enough. Okay, it's not enough that your father and your grandfather believe. You have to believe too. Okay, it has to be personal. God has no grandchildren. So Jacob has to establish his own personal relationship with God, and here in the wilderness, in this place called, we'll get to the name in a minute, but he'll rename it. But look at the promises of verse 13. He will discover that this wonderful God, who is his father's God and his grandfather's God, what does this God promise in verse 13? He says, I'm with you. In other words, there's companionship. You're not alone in this. He says, I'll keep you wherever you go. There's safety and protection. No worries. I'm with you. I'll keep you. He says, and will bring you back to this land. I'm going to guide you. I'll be with you. I'll protect you. And then a personal guarantee, right? I will not leave you until I've done that which I have spoken to you. Wow, what an assurance now that he is on the road, being alone, on the run. What other words could encourage you? God is with me. He's going to protect me. He's going to guide me. He's going to be bringing me back. There are no other words that can encourage you that much. So God promised to be with Jacob. Whatever the circumstances were ahead, he's going to be with him. The Lord of all the earth promised to go with Jacob to protect him. Back then, okay, if you read the stories, the understanding was this: when you left home, you left your God. Here, God is going to go with him when he leaves home. So no matter what happened, God was going to accomplish his will through Jacob, and the promise of his presence is repeated to us too. It's repeated to God's people all throughout Bible history, to the very present. He's present and he'll never leave. So what happens next? We see in the next few verses, in verses 16 to 22, that God is going to work in his life. He's going to respond to God's promise here. He'll be conscious that, look, God is in this place. And he's going to respond rightly. He'll change the name of the place from the place is originally called Luz, which means separation. But he'll call it Bethel, the house of God. He was separated from his home, but the God of his home is with him. This is encouraging. He learns here on this trip, even though God will appear to him at least 5 more times in the biblical record, this lesson here The first time he meets God is going to be a significant one because, again, he's given the promise that was passed along through the patriarchs. He learns here that God is interested in him, that God is at work in his life, and that God's not going to leave him. That is a tremendous lesson for us. So from that night on here, he knows God's with me, and he has nothing to fear. In verses 16 to 22, as we read here, he'll respond in the morning. He'll respond with worship. He begins his day with worship. He turns the pillow that he put his head on, the hard pillow, the stone pillow, he'll make it an altar. He'll give the new name to the place, Bethel, which means the house of God, rather than Luz, the place of separation. His faith was weak, but he does believe. He does believe the promise of God. There's a little bit of debate on his response here, whether he's making a bargain or not. I'll tell you which side I land on that in a minute, but let's go ahead. Either way, here's a new chapter in his life, a new beginning. His journey of faith. He's also going to start developing his relationship with God. Prayer is going to be much more significant in his life. And by the way, 20 years later, when he returns to this very same place where God said he'll bring him back, he's much more mature because his faith grows, as all of our faith should. Look at verse 16. And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not." And he was afraid and said, "How dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillows and set it up for a pillar and poured oil upon the top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel, or Bethel. But the name of that city was called Luz at first. Again, that name means separation. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house. In all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee." So here we have the vow on this journey of faith. He wakes up in the morning, and look, if God protects him and provides for him, he's going to show his devotion and dedication to God through the tithe. Now, it's difficult to interpret this passage, especially to see the motivation behind the vow. To some people, it seems that Jacob is making a bargain, or he's bargaining with God. If that's actually the case, if you compare what he just bargained with versus what was promised to him in verse 14 and 15, if you go back and reread verse 14, you'll see that the bargain was much less than what God had already said. And that's why one of the reasons I don't think it was a bargain. I'll tell you what I think it was. Apparently, to some, again, his faith wasn't strong enough to take God at his word, so he had to make the tithe conditional if this was a bargain. Another interpretation, however, is the "if" in the original language can also be "since." Since God is doing this, since you're going to guide me, protect me, then I will. So if the word "if" is simply a part of all Hebrew oaths, because they are, that word "if" is part of all Hebrew oaths. If that's the case, then Jacob was binding himself to a tenth unconditionally. If he's just saying "since." So the question again is, was Jacob trying to bargain with God? It's possible. Perhaps the passivity of his father, he didn't teach Jacob on how to worship God. I'm not certain. I believe that the language indicates that it can be "since," so it would be something like this: "Since you have blessed me, I will follow you." Whether Jacob was bargaining or pledging his faith, either way, God blessed him. So, personally, I think he is pledging his faith. He's affirming, I believe you in what you said. And because I believe you, I'm gonna tithe. I'm gonna show you or demonstrate my faith and loyalty to you through the tithe. So let me just quickly go over a theology of the vow. Okay, a vow was never something that God had commanded or required. I'm not going to say it's neither good or bad. It is something that personally you can decide to do or not. It's an expression. It can be an expression of devotion or thanksgiving. It's a solemn promise. It's a pledge that binds you to perform a specified act or to behave in a certain manner. There's good examples and bad examples of vows in the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament. Old Testament vows. The first mention of a vow is the one that we just read. It's very similar to Hannah's vow. If then, or since then. But here, remember Jephthah's vow? Do you remember Jephthah at all, one of the judges? After victory, I think it was, the first living thing that comes out of the door, I'll sacrifice. Rash vow. Not God's will. Not empowered by God to do. Right? Hannah's vow. I don't have a child, but if I have one, I'm going to dedicate him to the service of God. Okay vow. She did it. David's vow. Turn to Psalm 132 real quickly. And again, I just want a quick theology of making vows. In Psalm 132, David makes a vow. In Psalm 132, let's read verses 2 to 5. Verse 1. Lord, remember David and all his afflictions, how he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob, surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, nor go up into my bed. I will not give thee sleep to mine eyes, or slumber to mine eyelids, until I find out a place for the Lord, a habitation for the mighty God of Jacob. There, he's invoking Jacob's name. I'm going to find a place for the temple. I'm a vow. So those are just some examples. Absalom also makes a vow in 2 Samuel. But there's different types of vows. In the New Testament, we won't go there, but there are vows made in the New Testament too. The Apostle Paul makes a vow. It's believed to be a Nazirite vow. Acts chapter 18, verse 18. 30 days of abstinence from meat and wine, and then he would have to shave off his hair. So was Paul against vows? No. Okay, again, it's an expression of devotion, an expression of thanksgiving. It's okay. It's not commanded against or commanded to. It is strictly a voluntary vow. There's another vow in the in the New Testament. There's some people that hate Paul, and they vow not to eat again until he's dead. Right? I think they broke that vow, probably. But again, all vows are made to God as a promise in expectation of his favor or as thanksgiving for his blessings. You can read Psalm 61:8. They use vows to praise the Lord, bless the Lord. They use them in annual festivals in the Old Testament. But again, vowing is voluntary. But after a vow is made, take it seriously. If you're going to promise to do something for God and you make the vow, you should pretty much do it. Take it seriously. Vows were to be made only after careful consideration and in keeping with God's will. Not a off the handle, I'll sacrifice the next thing that walks through this door vow. But according to God's will. So again, it could be a joyful worship in faith and love, Psalm 61, verse 4 and 5. But a vow is voluntary. If you're going to make a vow to the Lord, Deep consideration and prayer with an understanding that it's to be done in His will, knowing that this is part of His will. So as we learn here, let's draw some prayer and faith principles out of the passage, out of chapter 28 here, right? The first character that we read about, Isaac. What do we learn from him? For me, I take it that a father should be proactive. A father needs to teach his children about true worship and about what's most important. Toward the end of his life, I think because he was passive, he forgot about God's promise about the younger one getting the blessing. And he lived by his feelings. Esau, go fix me some food, and then I'll bless you. But that wasn't God's will. Okay? So we learned from Isaac and from Esau. Remember Esau, he focused on the here and now, a day late and a dollar short to please his parents, trying to marry not the Canaanites, but rather other relatives. Jacob, some principles that we draw from this story here. Sometimes trouble, hard times, causes us to walk by faith. Get out of the house, your brother's going to kill you. You can't be a homeboy or a homebody anymore. You've got to walk by faith. Pursue God's will. Know God's word. Make your faith personal. God has no grandchildren. Okay, He's got to have a personal faith of His own. It's not enough, again, to hear the wonderful stories about Christians in your line. You've got to have your own story. You have to enter into your own story about how God was faithful to you and He made the promises came true. The prayers were answered. It's got to be real. And here we see Jacob starting that walk of faith, claiming the promises, pledging his faith and allegiance. So again, I don't think Jacob was making a bargain with God. I think he was affirming his faith. And he would learn many other lessons when he was being a schemer, that God would put him through some hard lessons that he would learn. But here, I'll close by reading Psalm 46, verse 7. Oh, just to reverse again. Prayer principles. Remember the prayer that Isaac prayed for Jacob? That God would bless you, God would keep you, God would multiply you, cause you to inherit the land. Those were already promises that God had already made. So again, praying God's promises back to God. And then here's the verse that Psalm 46 kind of memorializes Jacob's prayer faith, his prayer and walk of faith. As he's walking, he'll find out that the Lord doesn't fail him. Listen to Psalm 46, verse 7. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Psalm 46, verse 7. So Jacob is on that walk of faith, and he's prayerful, and he's dedicated his life, he's consecrated his life to the worship of the true God. So as we enter into prayer this evening, let's remember, as Isaac did, he prayed what God had already promised. Pray God's promises back to him.